Welcome to Illini Drive on 107.1 WPGU. This Monday, it was 60-some degrees outside today. Sun was shining. The days are getting longer. Nights are getting shorter. Nithin, how are you feeling, man?
I'm feeling good. I mean, I'm in shorts and a t-shirt right
Yeah,
now,
I
which
saw
that is a good feeling.
Mm-hmm.
But Brendyn, I'm going to warn you. Just wait. We're going to get that second winter.
Oh, I'm
the
ready.
second
You
wind
think
is
so?
going to come. Oh, it always comes though. It always
But
comes.
it seems like, because, like, I guess what do people call this? Like the spring of deception or whatever.
Mhm.
I feel like it always comes a little earlier. And I feel like this one's a little late.
So you think it was just one prolonged winter?
Yeah.
Turned in.
Because we didn't really get. Let me look at the weather. For
The thing
next
is,
10
though,
days.
we always get like a late March week, a week or two, or
Mhm.
early April week or two, where it's cold, and then we start to ease into warmer weather. I'm not buying it totally yet.
Well, the high for the next 10 days, there's only 3 days where it's in the 40s. And those days are all high 40s. But it says on Sunday there's a chance that it could snow. So maybe overnight. But something that might melt by the morning. I don't know. I'm not a meteorologist.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? I hope that it stays warm as long as possible until obviously next fall. Because this is my favorite time of the year. I get a little happier, get a little more energetic. Days start lasting a little longer. You can go outside more, especially now being trapped inside for most of my time. But yeah, I mean, I'm happy. Spring is coming.
Good time.
No, I'm so excited. Other thing to be excited about, man, Andre Curbelo. He's nice.
He is nice.
6 of 8, 6 of 7 for the free throw, and a great win for him. He was the leading scorer, tied with I would assume, I think. In that win, that crucial, virtually one seed locking win against Ohio State on Saturday in Ohio State. Illinois coming in, beating the Ohio State Buckeyes 73-68 behind, obviously, Andre Curbelo and Audisumu. Ohio State's leading scorer, E.J. Liddell, with 19. Dwayne Washington with 15 of his own. Really, really even game for pretty much the entirety of the game, especially throughout most of the second half.
Yep.
And a lot of big a lot of big punches being thrown. A lot of, responses, bucket here, a bucket there, a three here, a three there. And it kind of all culminated at the end when Illinois was trailing a little bit. And DeMonte Williams hit a three to tie it up, and then ball was in Audisumu's hands for most of the last part of the game. He hits an and one to go up three, and then they make a stop on defense, and he gets fouled, gets the last two free throws, puts them up 5, virtually or pretty much ending the game. But yeah, I mean, you can't say enough about this win. One, it was so important to get this win back because the way Ohio State beat Illinois in the first matchup in Champaign, that's so important. But the return for Audisumu, had a great game, made, I think, his first 5 field goals attempted, and obviously clutched the game up as he usually does. And I think looking at this game in terms of what we've seen for the past 2 weeks of this team, Audisumu obviously being out, I think when you look at this game, right, Audisumu had 19 points, and 14 of those points that came throughout most of the first 35-ish minutes of this game. I think we've seen that without Audisumu, Illinois could have made that up somewhere else, right?
Mm-hmm.
Trent Frazier maybe not getting into foul trouble could have made that up. We've seen that in the 3-game stretch they did not have Audisumu, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Nebraska. But what's so crucial about Audisumu is if Illinois was trailing this game without Audisumu, I don't think they would have won.
Yeah, I don't either. And you said it well, because it was a 4-point deficit with, I think, like 2 minutes left.
Mm-hmm.
And all credit to the defense for starters, because the defense completely shut down Ohio State down the stretch. Tough shot after tough shot. I mean, E.J. Liddell had a turnaround that I was a little scared about.
Yeah.
But it was good defense on it. It was just that Liddell had made some nice plays earlier. And then Iowa, of course, as usual, the closer, the guy we've known throughout his time at Illinois, the guy that it just seems like in the biggest moment, you not only aren't surprised, you expect it. Every single time he comes through. Nebraska, Northwestern, now Ohio State, last year, Michigan, Wisconsin. I mean, he's built up this resume as one of the best players in the country while also being one of the clutchest players in the country, because he's come through time and time again. And with the Michigan loss yesterday, it makes it a little interesting on how they do some seeding, because while the 1 seed is the most important part of this whole equation, the second most is the higher 1 seed between the 3, 4.
Right.
Because you would rather play Baylor, especially the way they've been playing recently. I mean, granted, they just beat Texas Tech by nearly 20 points, and they look dominant in the second half. But Gonzaga looks, I mean, they're undefeated for a reason, and they've dominated every single opponent they've played. So there are some sort of things that add to each win. It's also interesting, though, I don't know if you were watching Iowa, Wisconsin, but the announcers, I don't know if they were playing it up a little bit or if they're being honest, but they're saying that Iowa's still in the running for a 1 seed. And that seems a little far-fetched for me, because as an Illinois fan, the only way Iowa would get a 1 seed would be if they pass Illinois. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Michigan, I mean, obviously they lost to Illinois earlier or last week, and then losing to Michigan State, splitting those 2 games with them. Michigan State's no chumps, though. I mean, they're a team that just went through the 2, 4, and 5 team, winning all those games in the last 2 weeks. So Michigan State, who I think has in the last few weeks earned themselves a tournament bid, that's a tough question, because I think Iowa really, them not showing up against the big teams in the Big Ten, that being Michigan and Illinois, is really telling, I think.
I think that's a little bit of an overstatement, though, because granted, the Michigan game just completely fell flat, but the Illinois game, they were in it for most of it.
I think when you look at the top 3 teams, right, in the Big Ten, or the top 4 teams excluding Iowa, so that'd be Michigan, Illinois, and Ohio State. I'd still put Ohio State over Purdue, in terms of national rankings. But I think they kind of all beat up on each other, right? And Iowa not having that win, I guess, against anybody but Ohio State, kind of hurts them. I think what they would realistically have to do to have any sort of chance at a 1 seed would be win out in the Big Ten tournament and take the entire championship, which is something Iowa could do. But I think when you look at Illinois and you look at Michigan, I think Michigan has pretty much locked it up, and Illinois is maybe 90% locked it up, unless they just, go out against who they play, Rutgers or Indiana, the winner of that, and totally, mess up, and then it's either Iowa or Ohio State that wins the entire tournament, if that makes sense. I feel like that's the only way either of them get a 1 seed over Illinois.
So I do think part of that would have to be Ohio State beating Michigan and then beating Illinois.
Yeah.
Because then you'd have that split against Michigan. You'd have that 2-1 advantage over Illinois. And you would have the Big Ten tournament championship. But even with that said, Illinois would also make the finals in that case. So it's hard.
Yeah, so it's hard.
It's hard to necessarily say if even that's enough. Like,
I know.
There's a lot of factors that go into this. And I guess that's why we're not bracketologists.
Yeah, that would make this time of year would make my head hurt. Because it's like just doing this for the Big Ten is insane, like what we're trying to do now. But then you also have to factor in, 9 other conferences realistically, and then you have to compete them against each other to talk about seeding. So glad that that's not my job to go through all those numbers and everything and figure that out. But yeah, I mean, look, I think you can't really count out Ohio State. I feel like they have a slim chance of making a 1 seed, but they still have a chance. Them losing 4 straight is really tough, though, at the end of their season, even though it is against some of the toughest competition in the Big Ten. But Iowa, I think, even has like a roughly same chance of Ohio State, but they just have to. They would both have to win out, and they would have to win out, like you said. Like Ohio State would probably have to beat Illinois, but then Illinois would also make the final. So I don't know.
I think Iowa would have a better chance if we're playing these scenarios, because they would, in their path, theoretically, they beat Illinois and they'd beat Michigan, who they lost to by 20 plus points.
Right.
They'd win that Big Ten tournament title. They would probably make it over Illinois then in that case. But even that case, I'm not sure is a guarantee, because Illinois has put up an incredible resume this last 2 months where they've had 1 blemish. That doesn't really look like a huge blemish.
Yeah, that it did in that moment, losing to Michigan State. Obviously, Michigan State going on to beat Ohio State later that week and beat Michigan just 2 days ago. So look, it's interesting, man, and I think that Illinois has done everything that they could in the last 2 months, like you said, to lock up that first seed. Obviously, if they found a way to beat Michigan State, it would pretty much be a lock. They would have even had a better chance at I think they would have been then percentage-wise tied for the Big Ten championship.
Mm-hmm.
I know we're going to get into that a little later, or the Big Ten regular season championship. But look, Illinois is playing the best basketball they have all season, which at other times has been really good early in the season, especially. Everything's clicking. They got 3 wins in a row, 2 against ranked opponents without their best player. I think it's really hard for bracketologists to look at Illinois and tell people that right now they're not a top 4 team in the nation.
Absolutely, and you break down the way they've played since that first Ohio State game.
Mm-hmm.
11 of 12. They've been in a couple close games, but it's really inferior opponents. It's a team like Nebraska and a team like Northwestern,
mm-hmm.
where it happens. These teams play down to competition, but against the best teams, you see Illinois play its best basketball. The first Wisconsin game, dominant. Iowa goes out there, gets a triple-double, but
mm-hmm.
it's not even close. You dominate the rebounding battle by, I think, 25.
Yeah.
Then you get the Michigan game. Well, no, I'm sorry, the second Wisconsin game, where you're dominating really the whole time, and then Dimitri Trice goes off at the end.
Mm-hmm.
The Michigan game, where you don't have your best player, and it doesn't matter. You beat what it was considered the hottest team in the country by 20-plus points at their home for their first home loss of the season. Then you beat an Ohio State team that you struggled with earlier. I think they've proven everything they need to at this point. The only reason you could say that maybe they don't deserve this 1 seed is if they flop completely in the Big Ten tournament, and I don't think that's likely at all.
Yeah. So for those of you wondering, obviously Illinois' first game in the Big Ten tournament is scheduled for 8:30 p.m. Eastern time, so 7:30.
Yeah.
Right? That's how time zones work? Okay, cool. Yeah. Thank you. On Friday, right? And they will play the winner of the Indiana-Rutgers game. That is the day before. I see a situation where if Rutgers goes in there and beats them, getting swept by Rutgers in a season series is really, really bad. Obviously, they've had times where they're ranked before in this year. Obviously, they're not ranked right now. Going and losing to Indiana wouldn't be as bad, I think, as going in and losing to Rutgers, even though Rutgers is the higher seed, because you already have 2 wins against Indiana. And you could make the argument that they kind of just had your card at that instance. But yeah, I think if they win on Friday and play into Saturday, probably would be against Iowa unless Nebraska, Penn State, or Wisconsin beats Iowa. I think that they virtually locked up the 1 seed conversation.
Yeah, it all comes down to how much the committee values a tournament championship.
Right.
Because if it's the equivalent of what I'd say a regular season champion is, yeah, there's an argument that Iowa or Ohio State could potentially leapfrog Illinois. But if they view it as I expect them to view it as you played well, especially if you're not a team that just won like 6 straight games, like similar to a UConn-esque run.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think a team that's in the 1 or 2 line may change that much unless there's, as we've talked about, a big drop-off with Michigan or with Illinois where they lose in that first game and it looks bad.
Yeah, that's wild, man. 9 more games in total if Illinois wins out for the rest of the season.
Hopefully 9 more.
Hopefully 9 more, right? You have to, it could be as low as 2, but at maximum 9. So hopefully it's 9, right? Hopefully it's 9. Hopefully they're playing in that national championship game. But yeah, this is a big weekend for Illinois, kind of cementing what they've been working for all season, coming in as a 7th seed at the beginning of the season, dropping all the way to 19 at one point, fighting all the way back to where they are right now, which is 3rd in the nation. So if they're really serious about getting that 1 seed, they have to take care of business on Friday against Rutgers or Indiana, and then notably on Saturday, I think that'd be a big game. Probably going to be facing Iowa. Iowa's playing really good basketball as of late, and that's going to be a huge matchup. I don't know if the National Player of the Year stuff, or not National Player, Big Ten Player of the Year stuff comes out tomorrow, right?
I am not sure. The Big 12 Player of the Year just came out.
Right, Cade Cunningham won.
So I'm guessing something like that?
Yeah, I would assume that it's going to come out tomorrow just because it is a regular season award. But if it were to come out later, that would have been a huge game for the Big Ten Player of the Year award. situation. But
Yeah, we kind of know who's going to win. Luka Garza is going to win. We just don't
think so.
I think it's almost a guarantee at this point. I don't think he should win, but just everything that's happened in the last 2 weeks with Iowa kind of getting hot lately,
Yeah,
and then
and Iowa not being playing.
Iowa missing the Michigan game, most importantly.
It's tough. But that leads us to our first break. When we get back, I thought the Michigan drama was over, and then statistics and rankings and records and a lot of numbers are making people a bit of mad this week.
It's never over.
It's never over. I don't want this to become a rivalry, but I mean it certainly has over the last 2 months. That's the Michigan-Illinois rivalry. When we come back on Illini Drive 107.1 WPGU. Welcome back to Illini Drive 107.1 WPGU. So, after Michigan lost to Illinois, they played Michigan State, won that game, and with that win, locked up the Big Ten Conference regular season championship. Right? They have the best since the beginning of the year. I think they talked about how because of unforeseen postponements and cancellations, they're going to go on win percentage. Every team was scheduled, I think, 20 games?
Yeah.
Was it 20 games?
20 games.
And Illinois played those 20 games. Obviously, Michigan being out for 3 weeks was not able to play those 20 games. I think they finished 17. So
14-3.
14-3, they had to make up some. But Illinois, sitting in second in the Big Ten with their 20 games, have 16 wins, so 2 more wins, and only 1 more loss.
So half a game ahead.
Half a game ahead, but they sit behind. Because the win percentage, Illinois ended with, I think, 80%, and Michigan ended with 83%. Now, I'm not a huge, I don't know. Look, this year's been weird, and there's been a lot of postponements, a lot of cancellations, that's the word. It's been weird. We've seen it throughout all of sports in the last 10 months since sports kind of came back over the summer. There's been cancellations, postponements, teams not being able to play games, teams having to make up games, and we've seen that, right? And I think my heart kind of goes out for Illinois. While I think that this is probably the least important title that they have their eyes on in the next 3 to 4 weeks, it's still important, right? It's a banner you can hang. It's something that you can put on as Illinois was Big Ten champions or co-Big Ten champions. I think it's weird because in this year in the Big Ten specifically, right? Me and Nithin came to campus not really knowing how sports were going to go this year as student sports journalists. And in August, Kevin Warren, or maybe that was early September, Kevin Warren said there will be no Big Ten athletics this semester. A few weeks down the line, immediately changed that, right? And released the Big Ten football schedule and everything. When Ohio State was the clear best team in the Big Ten, they only had 5 games period, leading into the Big Ten championship. At the beginning of the season, the rule was you have to have 6 in order to qualify for the Big Ten championship. Ohio State is clearly the best team in the conference. They're not going to leave them out. Well, do you think that Illinois has I don't want to say the right. Do you think they have some solid ground to stand on when they say we should be considered for co-Big Ten championships?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's definitely some ground, and it starts with the fact that they have that half game lead. Because I don't think if you're 15-4 versus 14-3, you may be co-Big Ten champs, but you're definitely not the lone Big Ten champ at that point because you've just played more games, and that's really why you have more wins. Having that half game lead, it means something at least. It means that there are 3 games if Michigan plays, they have to win them all, which isn't a guarantee by any means. The thing with this whole situation is that we kind of knew going into the year, as you said, this is going to be a weird year. And we've seen a lot of stuff happen. We've seen teams shut down for weeks multiple times. We saw that in the Baylor program. We saw that with Michigan, where they shut down for an extended period, and it led to this whole back and forth between Illinois and Michigan fans.
Right.
I'm upset as a fan, obviously, because I'd like Illinois to be at least a co-Big Ten champion, especially after last year when they had a shot and you lose against Ohio State. And it's a tough pill to swallow because you're one game back from being a co-Big Ten champ. This year, I'm really not too concerned about it because, as you've said, this team's aspirations come in March and really in April. Mm-hmm. And this is something I think it would be kind of funny if Illinois in like a year or two just put up a banner that said like 2020, 2021 Big Ten leader in wins or something.
Yeah.
Like that. Like I'd enjoy that. But
I think that this team 100% has that ground to complain on because, like you said, I mean, if you put this in any statistical like program that just does like, any rankings, right? You look up right now, like I know people were looking up ESPN rankings. They were looking up rankings on Big10.com itself, right? Just the automated rankings. Illinois is ahead, and that's because they have more wins. They have 2 more wins and only 1 more loss. So they're statistically a half game ahead. I think it's what my issue comes with is that we've seen them change the rules in certain situations.
So you're saying the Big Ten should say something?
I think it's a Big Ten. Right. I don't think it's Michigan's like place to say anything. I don't think it's Michigan's fault or anything. I don't think it's Illinois' Illinois shouldn't have to go campaign, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think it's anybody's fault necessarily that this happens. But I think that when you look at this, right, I don't see how you could leave Illinois out of the conversation when they are the leader in wins and they played more games. It seems almost like the Big Ten is not necessarily punishing them, but when you play more games, you have more opportunity to lose. And I mean, win percentages is not when in a situation like this where maybe if Michigan was only able to play 10 conference games, obviously the wins thing isn't the right way to look at it. Mm-hmm. But with this being that close and Michigan not playing some games, I think wins matters just a little bit more than win percentage. And I think that the way that the fact that the Big Ten isn't really looking at this, and not that we know of at least, is just kind of a weird way. I don't think that there'd be anything wrong with declaring, hey, these are co-Big Ten champions, right? You look at Michigan's resume. It's weird because there's like give and take on both sides. Michigan doesn't really, I wouldn't consider any of their losses bad, right? We've seen when they lost to Minnesota at home. That'd be like really the only loss I'd say is really bad, right?
Because, but at the time it wasn't.
But at the time it wasn't because this is a team that almost went undefeated at home, right? This is a team that beat Iowa at home. I think Ohio State at home. But also looking at Illinois' record, who does have bad losses? You look at Maryland, you look at Rutgers, but they also have the most good wins in the conference, right? So it's kind of like a give and take type situation where, hey, both these teams balled out this year. Some unforeseen consequences happened, and Michigan wasn't able to finish out their schedule. But Illinois played more games, won more games, and only lost 1 more game because they played more games. You can make that argument. So when you look back at this weird year and, all these rules and regulations that were put forth at the beginning of the season are fluid. They've seen that with the Big Ten football schedule and that season. I don't see why the Big Ten can't sit down and look at this and be like, okay, hey, both these teams deserve and have the resume for a co-Big Ten championship. Let's just do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand it, but I think I disagree with it.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it's the argument you're using about football.
Yeah.
Because there is a difference. Like, the regular season Big Ten champion doesn't really mean anything.
100%.
Like, it has value to the fan base. It has value to the team. You get a 1 seed in your conference tournament. But it doesn't, especially in a conference like the Big Ten. This isn't like the Ivy League where they don't really have a conference tournament. They just play the 1-2. In this game, in this conference, winning the regular season conference does not guarantee you a bid in the tournament.
Right.
So it's different than football, where in football you're playing for a conference championship. You're playing in the title game, which Ohio State and Northwestern played. And the winner, especially in a conference like the Big Ten, has a huge advantage if they're going to compete in the college football playoff.
Right.
So really the way I feel is that you should just crown one or the other Big Ten champions, because I don't love co-champions in this sort of system because it becomes arbitrary. At what point do we draw the line?
Mm-hmm.
Is Iowa considered a conference champion then? Because they have the same amount of wins as Michigan. Like where do we draw the line? It just seems very random that we're just naming them both co-champions. So for me personally, either say win percentage, which they did. They said win percentage matters more. Okay, fine, Michigan gets it. Or say games above 500 in conference matters more. Illinois.
Mm.
I'd rather see that than just randomly saying, oh, these two are co-champions. Michigan gets the 1 seed, Illinois gets the 2 seed. That to me does honestly nothing.
100%. I think it is arbitrary in the terms that, them saying, look, Illinois and Michigan obviously had the best seasons in the Big Ten, and both seasons are pretty comparable. Both should be co-Big Ten championships. But I think sometimes, you have to be arbitrary, especially this year. You have to be able to be fluid, and you have to be able to.
But like, what good does it do? I mean, that's my.
But I mean, I think you look at these two schedules and these two resumes for Illinois and Michigan, and you're like, how do you differentiate which one deserves better?
Mm-hmm.
Either way you look at it, you could say wins against above 500. You could say win percentage. I'm not going to sit here and say Michigan doesn't deserve the Big Ten championship.
Yeah.
But I'm also not going to sit here and say Illinois doesn't deserve the Big Ten championship. But I will sit here and say Iowa or Purdue or Ohio State doesn't deserve the Big Ten championship. Iowa played the same amount of games as Illinois, has 2 less wins, 2 more losses.
Mm-hmm.
They have the head-to-head loss against Illinois and Michigan. I can say, with pretty good confidence that Iowa doesn't deserve the Big Ten championship as much as Michigan or Illinois.
Yeah.
But I can't sit here and say Michigan had this much better of a season than Illinois. But I think they're very, very even. And in this type of situation, when you look at everything's fluid, everything is ever changing because of that type of stuff. I mean, even look at how the Big Ten responded to the Michigan athletic shutdown because of the variant, right? They gave Michigan that time to get back to where they were conditioning wise and mental wise, because they weren't able to even meet as a team for 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that, and we saw that because women's basketball played the same day that men's basketball was supposed to play, but men's basketball was able to take that time off. Obviously, we talked about how we felt about that. But I think that there has to be some level of fluidity in this situation. And it's just, I understand where Illinois fans are coming from,
No, I get it. I understand that it's just frustrating being a 16-win team when everyone else in your conference has won 14 or less games.
100%.
And you're somehow not the conference champion. I'm okay with what they've done because it at least they chose a path to go and they stuck with it. I like this more than what they did in football, because with football, it was clear they did it for the money. They did it so Ohio State could get in the college football playoff. And that was the reason why Ohio State played in that game instead of Indiana, who probably should have played if we're following it by the book.
Right.
Ultimately, like, it's a different situation, I understand, because Illinois and Michigan aren't tremendously affected by it, other than in the storybooks, like 20 years from now, we can't sit around and say Illinois was the Big Ten regular season champ. So I get, like, there are that fan perspectives that want to share that crown. I just think it's confusing and it doesn't really apply necessarily to this situation.
Do you think if the situation was flipped and Illinois had the schedule that Michigan had the success that Michigan had, and Michigan vice versa? When I look at these two programs, these two schools, Michigan has obviously had a bunch more success recently
and overall.
And yeah, I would say overall as well, than Illinois has had in their history recently and overall. Do you think Michigan fans would be, I don't want to use the term like squabbling, but like kind of grinding for as much as possible? I feel like Illinois fans are really like trying to grab as much of this as possible. And I think most of that comes from the fact that they're not usually there. While I feel like some team like Michigan, if they were in this situation, Michigan fan base has had so much success, they'd be way more concerned about winning the championship on Sunday or doing as well as you can in March Madness rather than like kind of just being like, oh man, we also deserve this. Do you feel that way?
Maybe, but like I understand that point, but I
Yeah.
honestly don't think so.
Mhm.
Just because if you've seen the way Michigan fans have acted, they've been just as bad as Illinois fans when it comes to the whole like, Michigan's afraid of Illinois, and then coming back like after they win a Big Ten title, they post all this stuff on Twitter about how they're Big Ten champs and Illinois isn't, and like,
Yeah.
I just think it's the inner childish nature that we all have in us
100%.
is coming out because sports is kind of the best place to give that voice.
Yeah, man, that's wild. Well, me and Nithin are going to take our last break. When we come back, you know what? It's going to be a surprise. Stick with us.
I'm surprised.
Me too, man. Stick with us on 107.1 WPGU. Welcome back to Illini Drive 107.1 WPGU. Last night was, I don't even want to call it All-Star Weekend, All-Star Sunday?
All-Star Day.
All-Star Day. It was All-Star Day.
All-Star Sunday sounds better.
Yeah, it was All-Star Sunday in Atlanta. You had the skills challenge before the game. You had the 3-point challenge before the game. Mm-hmm. You had the first half of the All-Star game, and you had the dunk contest, and then the second half of the All-Star game. A very lopsided All-Star game. Team LeBron.
Kind of makes sense if you look at the rosters.
Yeah. Team LeBron was just stacked, and then I would argue that Team Durant, didn't have three of the best players that were officially on their team, that being Kevin Durant, Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons. Joel Embiid, that was a crazy story.
Yeah.
The fact that they were put into contact tracing protocol literally the morning of the All-Star game. I remember waking up to that notification. That was weird because I really want to get my hair cut, but now I'm scared. Anyway.
There's so many things to be scared of at this point.
Yeah, I know.
It's just managing risk at this point.
But it just at the same time, it happened during the Super Bowl too. Super Bowl week, the same thing happened.
Oh, so you think it's like a trend where just barbers get COVID easily?
Barbers, bro. But also I don't know. We'll see. But I definitely need a haircut though. But yeah, I think that Team Durant was very, very undersized. And also when you have Giannis, who I think went 16 for 16.
Yeah.
With 2 threes.
3 threes, I think.
3 threes, 16 for 16. That's why he won All-Star Game MVP. LeBron was playing amazing out there. You had Steph Curry and Damian Lillard in the same backcourt shooting half-court shots multiple times.
That was so cool.
Damian Lillard hit the half-court shot to win the game. I saw this thing today where they were talking about Damian Lillard. If it wasn't for Steph Curry, Damian Lillard would also be considered one of the greatest shooters of all time.
Yeah, did you see that Twitter exchange they had? I think it was yesterday after the game.
No.
Where some account just posted Steph and Dame shooting it, and Dame's like, "All right, now you got to do it in game."
To
Steph
exactly.
Curry.
Well, those are the two greatest long range. I want to say long range shooters, because I think there's people who are maybe better at the line than Damian Lillard. But I don't think anybody shoots like him. You could even argue that he might shoot it better long range than Steph Curry does.
Yeah.
He just doesn't lose his form. He shoots his form all the way in the half court. Mm-hmm. Steph Curry kind of lobs it up there, and he's just so good with placing the ball at different spots that,
he just practices different forms. If you watch his warm-ups, they're incredible.
Yeah. But I think that's just insane. It's also terrifying to think about because, if it's any way close to what we saw happen in the last 10 years with the 3-point boom, if guys were just out there shooting 35, 40-foot jumpers just out of nowhere casually, that's going to be so terrifying in the NBA. How do you guard anybody at that point?
Well, that's when the whole idea of a 4-point line will come into place.
Do you think it'll ever happen?
I hope not.
I hope not either.
Because
it kind of takes away.
I think, it takes away from the game, and then it creates this whole animal. We've seen it just with bringing back the 3-point line and how analytics have changed the way basketball's played. It's kind of why, like, at times I enjoy college basketball more because you still get the traditional mid-range shooters. Like, the Ayo Dosunmus of the world can be awesome, even though he's just a fantastic mid-range shooter. And
Right.
he can shoot the three, but doesn't take a ton. The NBA's gotten to a point where they've stretched the floor so much that it's just easier to get spacing and it's easier to get 3-point
100%.
shooting. And with that 4-point line, I just think it would expand it even more.
Yeah, I think that is definitely something that you lose is just like the greatness of, because I feel like everybody's like, oh, everybody has to shoot threes. When you're a star in this league, you can take any shot you want, right?
Mhm.
Like Kawhi Leonard is a fantastic mid-range shooter. LeBron James is a really good post shooter right now.
Joel Embiid's still
Embiid's
dominating.
a really good mid-range shooter. Kevin Durant. All the superstars you still have to play, but it does kind of force the role players to be single faceted.
You are 3-and-D or you're nothing.
You're right. You're a 3-and-D guy, or it's really hard. Or you can run the floor and roll really well, or you're kind of not that great in the NBA. There's not really a place for you.
Yeah, it's nearly impossible to be a guard or a wing at this point and not be able to shoot the three.
100%. I think if you would add that 4-point line, you would also find yourself in situations where, you'll watch the worst teams in the NBA try to shoot a bunch of threes in a game and go like 11 for 40, in some nights. And
you'll see the worst version of the Houston Rockets.
Right, exactly. You'll see games that are very, very unbearable to watch. If you add a 4-point line and I have to watch guys shoot it from 40 feet when they suck and start airballing, it's going to be very hard to watch.
It's just LaMelo Ball in high school. That's what we're 100%.
But also, like, it adds like a whole, like, there'll be like stretch bigs in like 10 years that can just pull up from 30 feet.
Yeah, you're going to get Kristaps Porzingis on steroids, essentially.
That'll be so weird. Now that we're talking about it more, I hope they don't add it. I think it definitely
that
takes
wave
away.
might be coming, though. Like the Chet Holmgrens of the world that already take a ton of threes in high school. That just might be the way we see basketball played for the next 15 years until there's the evolution, whether it's with rules or analytics or whatever.
What do you think will change that? Because like when you look at like early NBA games, like 50s and 60s, huge high scoring, right? And then you get rule changes, you get style play changes, leads into the 80s and 90s where the pace and the scoring slows down to like 80, 90s a game, even through the 2000s. And then obviously with the 3-point era, it's just, scoring has exploded. What do you think? And obviously, I don't know your basketball philosophy, but like, what do you think has to happen in order to kind of get away from this 3-point era? Because I think it is so hard to get away from, because at the end of the day, if you can shoot a mid-range and a 3-point at the same percentage, you're obviously always going to take the 3-point.
Yeah, I think it's something that, I mean, it would be an interesting show topic to do later down the road, but like rule changes, because we've seen how the NBA evolves with different rule changes, whether it's the hand checking rule or with 3 seconds for defense rule. Like, it evolves as it goes. I think the next wave is going to be, at least my next wave would be eliminating the like jump into person foul, because we've seen it with like Luka, Dame, Harden, Steph, the best players, Trae Young especially, that they get away with jumping into a guy. And as a result, if you get rid of that, one, guys are going to be taking less threes. Yeah. And also they're just going to have a better flow to the game. And there might be some opening up of the floor and of the mid-range, because you're not just three hunting at that point, because you're not going to get that call. I think there are ways to do it, but I don't know if the NBA will do it.
Yeah, it's just tough. Like, I understand the allure to want high scoring, like high offensive games. That's obviously what they've been going for the last 10 years. But, I mean, it is just kind of tough. Like, all I can see in my head, I've been envisioning for the last 5 minutes, is just how the court would look with a 4-point line. Like, would they have to spread out the sides of the courts to make it wider? At what point is the basketball court too big? Will they ever add a 6th man in the NBA rotation? Like, these are all just, like, crazy what-if scenarios that would probably never happen, but run through my mind when you were talking about spacing a little earlier. It's just like, so at what point, like, are they going to keep adding rules, adding different ways to score to kind of accommodate the skills of these guys? Because, look, I do think that it's very impressive that Damian Lillard and Steph Curry can confidently pull up from half court and make that. But am I going to sit here and say that that needs to be incentivized with an extra point. Because no, not really, because then everybody's going to want to be able to do that.
I don't think it should be incentivized with an extra point. There's a reason why originally basketball didn't have a 3-point line.
Yeah.
Because the end goal was to get to the rim.
Right.
And at this point, you still have that goal, but there's no longer that middle ground, that 10-foot jumper. There's a reason why guys like Zach LaVine talks about how he loves shooting mid-range jumpers, but he's been told time and time again that the 3-point line's better. And it is. Like, analytically, it's just simple. It's so easy. The math is right in your face that it's just a better shot, that it's hard to refute. And all these guys, they want to win titles, and that's how you win a title at this point.
Do you think so? How sustainable though is like just like so much 3-point shooting in the playoffs? Because like you look at teams, and I think really the only team that's been able to do it that successfully is the Warriors. Obviously, they were the prototypical team, but they also didn't win solely because of their 3-point efficiency. They won because they moved the ball in that 4 or 5 year stretch. They moved the ball better than anybody in the league, and they played really, really good defense at times, especially in the playoffs. And their 4 Cavs matchups were kind of just lopsided at some points. But like you look at teams like the Rockets, who, with James Harden and Chris Paul, never really made it, even though they were just built for this 3-point era. You look at teams that shoot threes really, really well and that don't make it that far in the playoffs, and you have teams that slow it down, right? Like that Toronto team that won slowed it down a lot or like really well. They had good ball movement. They had guys that could score at all levels, and they decided to. The Lakers just won their championship last year, and they were a huge paint points. So I don't know how sustainable that is in the playoffs, which we see every year. Experience matters a lot more, and slowing the game down in defense matters so much more.
That's fair, but also there are small changes within each group.
Yeah.
Granted, they're not all the Rockets. And I think the Rockets argument is kind of the opposite of the Warriors argument, where the Warriors were so good for a couple of reasons. They played great defense. It was so underrated, their defense.
Yeah, very, very underrated.
And they also moved the ball. They, as you said, they shot a lot of threes, but it wasn't their main focus. They're trying to get to the rim. They're trying to get open shots, and they were just so talented that that's what you get. The Rockets argument, I think the main reason why they didn't win is because they were so ISO heavy, and it's hard to win that way. Like, there are very few teams that win with just one superstar.
Really ever. Yeah.
I think 2011 Mavs is really the only team, and they didn't play like that.
Yeah, they didn't play like
they played like a team
or nothing. They played,
So there are different qualities within teams that you can win. You can win with just with not just shooting threes. But you're seeing it throughout. Like, the Raptors were taking more threes than ever. Kawhi Leonard, who would have been a Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant type player 15 years ago, taking a lot of mid-range jumpers, he takes them, but he takes a lot of threes now too. You saw Fred VanVleet go off because he was such a great 3-point shooter in that series. You're seeing guys like KCP step up, and you're seeing LeBron take, I think, like 7 threes a game, and Anthony Davis
a lot more than
even stretching out and taking threes. So it may not be that you're getting a Rockets or an Atlanta Hawks like team that just chucks threes, but you're just going to get teams that will focus more, especially their role players, as you said earlier. Do you think it changes ever?
In terms of what?
Just this 3-point revolution that we revert back.
Man, I hope so. I think it's really right now. I think you obviously see outliers, right? You see teams that shoot really poorly from the 3, but you see games where teams shoot very amazing, and it's very fun to watch, and it's very high pace. I think right now it's pretty balanced in that terms. I would like to see fouls cut down. I would like to see defense matter a little bit more throughout the game instead of just at the end of games. But yeah, I think that there has to be some form of generational talent that changes the paradigm and shifts it back to what we've known. In
like
the
some
past.
Just insane big man.
Right, like some, but even, and I was thinking about that when we were talking earlier, even at that point, like if you have like a insane big man that you can't guard one-on-one in the paint, right? Even at that point, the first instinct I would even have is just surround him with amazing 3-point shooters.
Similar to the Dwight Howard Magic sort of situation.
Exactly. So at that point, is it shifting anything, or is it just having one guy that can't shoot threes and four guys who can shoot them phenomenally, and just trusting the big man to be able to pass out if he gets double or triple teamed?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it ever changes. I hope so, because I do like slower games. I like games that are.
That's why the playoffs are.
That's
fun.
why the playoffs are so fun, is because it feels like every moment matters.
Yeah.
In some games it feels like it doesn't, especially if you were to add a 4-point line. I feel like it wouldn't really even matter until the end of the games, because if you have guys that you feel confident in, going 2 for 8 at least from the 4-point line, that's 8 points right there. On only however many shots, and then my brain's wilding right now, but like that, those are also huge rebounding opportunities for the offense. Because
I think that might be the next revolution, just offensive rebounding.
Yeah, I mean, you've seen it recently too.
Yeah, where teams just play like 3 7-footers and they're trying to just get
as many in pass outs.
Yeah, as many shots up as possible.
Because if you add a 4-point line, you're shooting from 30 feet. Those rebounds are going to be unpredictable, wild. They're going to go everywhere. And then at that point, like if you have a few big men that can also stretch the floor just a little bit, you have rebounding. You have guys that are going to be able to pass out. But that just doesn't seem like basketball to me.
Weirdly, I think it all might come back to how we play pickup basketball, because that's kind of how the 3-point revolution started. Where people would play pickup, and you get 2 points for a 3 and 1 point for a 2.
Yeah,
you're going to take more threes.
Right, exactly.
And that's just what happens. That, like when I play basketball, that's what happens a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of people take layups, they take 3-pointers for a reason, and it's still fun for us. But for the fan, quote unquote. Right. Obviously, there's no fans for pickup. But
no, there's a bunch of fans at your games.
Oh, thank you, Brendyn. Hey, we might be playing soon in IM. I appreciate that. But the point is, like, you get this sort of change because the way the next generation plays growing up.
Yeah.
So we'll just have to see what that evolution is.
Man, that's wild. Well, that'll do it for our show and our ode to pickup basketball. But yeah, tomorrow it should be Gabby and Josh in here. Talk more about Michigan, Illinois. Talk more about the end of this little regular season that's been so special for Illinois. But yeah, join me and Nithin back on Wednesday for breaking down the Big Ten tournament on Illini Drive 107.1 WPGU.